Okay, so today we are going to talk about. I don't know why I'm laughing. This is kind of funny. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about an age-old question: did Jesus exist? Right? That's a really important thing to consider because if he did exist, well, a lot of people as of now who say he doesn't are screwed unless they want to change their minds at some point. But I'll say this: there is a lot of evidence, and I'm pretty sure there's almost most historians agree that he was a real person. Like he was a real dude. His crucifixion was real. And here's the thing: if his crucifixion was real, then it might just be crazy that he came back from the dead. And I know, I'm laughing saying that because someone's gonna sit there and say, "No, that makes no sense. No, that can't be." But listen, like realistically, listen. If this guy existed, and there's sources that say he did exist, and then not only that, but sources that say he was actually crucified, and if there's sources that say he's crucified, hear me out. There's gonna be sources that say, unironically, he just kind of didn't die though, because a couple days later he came back, right? Like you think that's pretty big. No one else in history is this popular for this story, and I won't say story for this fact. Like no one else in history is known for this. No one else in history is known for this as much as Jesus is known for this. Like that's another thing too. You have to understand this. No one else in history is known to the extent that Jesus is known. People know who Jesus is. You mention the name Jesus, people either get upset, happy, confused, whatever. But people generally understand who you're talking about when you mention the name Jesus, whether they like him or not. Like how you have to understand. Oh well, it's because people have talked about it for so long. No, it's because of what he did. Like, don't get me wrong. Talking about it for thousands of years also helps, but it's a crazy thing to say that a guy came back from the dead after he was crucified. For any of you who aren't historically versed, being crucified was not fun. It was the worst possible death at that time. I mean, probably besides being eaten alive, but even then, crucifixion, you were alive for a decent amount of time. And the way they did it to Jesus was even worse because before they crucified him, they beat him and maimed him to such an extent they couldn't tell if he was a man or a woman. Before Jesus was crucified, he was maimed to the point of where they could not tell if he was a man or a woman. That is how bad they maimed him. Can you imagine that? That you can't even tell if someone alive is a man or a woman. Like, not non binary, not all that non binary crap. I'm being serious. They could not tell he was man or woman because of how badly they beat him. And then to add to that, they crucified him on top of that, which is even crazier, right? They had him carry a heavy cross. And then to stack that on top, to stack something else on top of that, they put a crown of thorns in his head. Now, I don't know if you understand what that means, but that means that there were thorns literally going through his brain. There were multiple parts of the crown that would go through his actual skull, his cranium, and into his brain. They were piercing his brain. So, on top of all this, he also got crucified. This guy should have been dead. He should have died. This isn't the situation of where your teammate says he's one shot. Jesus was more than one shot. He was tapped. He was one tap. He wasn't even it's beyond one tap. Jesus was literally one tap. He died and came back. You know how pissed off I'd be if I did all that to somebody and they didn't. I wouldn't do that. But you know how pissed off I would be if I did do that to somebody and they were still alive 3 days later. At least give me a week. I'm kidding. Anyway, right? So you have to understand. It's really crazy to say that he just didn't exist, or even not to say that, but to doubt he existed at all. Many historical, you can look this up. There are plenty of historical figures who agree he was a real person. And if he's a real person, it comes down to a matter of what did he actually do what he said he did, right? Was he actually crucified? Yes, he was crucified. There were a lot of people who agree that he's crucified. A lot of historians agree with that, right? And I'll probably even link some things down in the description too. But he was crucified. And here's the thing: you document that kind of crap, especially when the guy comes back after being crucified and what they did to him. Like, I'm like you understand. We don't do anything of the sort close to crucifixion. Well, no, not in today's time, in most cases, unless you generally live in some nomad country where people eat people alive, which maybe, okay, yeah, maybe they do that. But anyway, nowadays, we don't do that because it's considered inhumane, which it was inhumane, but the Romans were just really good at torturing people. They were just really good at torturing people. Wait a minute, give me a second. Okay, yeah. So they were so, and here's the thing: to make sure he was dead, they stabbed him in the side with a giant spear, and like they stabbed him in like directly in like where his right under his rib cage, about like basically in his stomach to make sure that he was dead, right? Anyway, they did a lot of things to make sure he was dead. They had guards roll him up in a tomb with a rock so big that they couldn't move it after they put it there. So again, even if you don't want to get super deep into the supernatural lore of it, this guy died the worst death possible a human being can imagine, and then on top of that came back 3 days later. So pick your poison, do what you will. This guy existed. There was almost a guarantee that he existed, and there's almost a guarantee he was crucified. And then to add to that, it'd be crazy to just not consider the fact that he actually did come back. And I know that someone's going to say, people don't do that. Well, again, you have to understand, he's not just a person. He is not just a person. And I know that sounds really cheesy, me saying that, but you have to understand that Jesus was supposed to be God and man at the same time. Not a demigod, God and man. Demigod's half-half. He was God and both man at the same time. So he wasn't just a person, which completely makes sense then, because shoot, if this guy's not even if this guy's not even like, for example, Jesus wasn't even born the same way that people were born. He wasn't impregnated by Mary wasn't impregnated by a man. She was impregnated by the Holy Spirit, which that's a whole different topic for a whole different day. I'm sure to the atheist ears, that's what she was impregnated by a ghost. Like I can only imagine like how crazy someone would go hearing that as an atheist. But anyway, long story short, let's make this quick. End of the day, Jesus was born unnaturally. He was killed in a natural way and came back in an unnatural way. And there are historical figures throughout history. But he is the only historical figure that has ever been written about that has come back from an almost certain death, not even almost certain, a certain death, right? Which generally, do your research, look it up, look up how they crucified him. It literally would make no sense to write about a guy being crucified like that and then say he came back, because you can't come back from that. That's the equivalent of saying you got. And here's the difference. I'll give you a better example. Like, you'd be crazy to write about that back then, because lying back then was not taken lightly. People were stoning people for just having sex outside of marriage. So if you were lying about some guy coming back from the dead, it was a lot. It'd be a crazy risk, right? And then I don't want to make this longer than 10 minutes, but long story short for this, let's put up all the facts. He was historically a figure. That is like almost guaranteed by a lot of stories. You can look that up yourself, right? And then to add to that, he died a natural death that kills everybody. Like, if you knew, I wish you understood how well the Romans knew how to kill people. They knew how to kill people, and in the worst ways possible. They were not going to, so he didn't just live. He couldn't have lived from that. He had to have died. And to make it even more serious, they sealed him off because they were afraid people were going to say, "Oh yeah, he's come back." They were ahead of it. They were ahead of everyone by 2,000 years. Everyone in today's society who says that Jesus couldn't have done, they were ahead of you by 2,000 years. They sealed it off with a stone that you couldn't move once you put it there. They were ahead of you guys by thousands of years. And guess what? The stone was moved. The guards were scared for their lives. One of them was actually afraid to tell them what happened, because if he did, he probably would have died. I think he did die. Long story short, this. Even after that, there were 500 witnesses at the time. The Bible says there were 500 witnesses at the time who saw Jesus, right? And mass hallucination is not a real thing. You cannot mass hallucinate the same thing with another person. Otherwise, you're all seeing the same thing. Like, scary but true, get with me real quick. If you and your 3 friends go to a haunted house and you all see a witch, you're not all seeing the same witch if it's fake. If it's real, you are all seeing the same witch. For example, if you all agree the witch was green, she was 5'3", she had blue eyes, and she had the laugh of a hyena, you probably all actually saw that thing. Whatever it was, demon, witch, weird old lady, whatever. You actually probably all saw that. Now, if one of you says the witch is 7 feet tall and green, and the other says the witch is blue and 5'3", and the third person just didn't see anything, that's called a hallucination. Mass hallucination is not a real thing. You cannot all see the same thing. Each person sees things differently. Like, generally, each person sees things differently. Just to give you perspective, I'm 5'10", 5'11" with shoes on, right? I am going to see someone 6 foot entirely different than someone who's 6'5" is going to see someone 6 foot. Someone who's 6'5" is going to see someone who's 6 foot as kind of short, a little bit short. They're going to see someone who's, now for me, 5'10", when I look at someone who's 5'1", they're super short. So you can only imagine how it looks for someone who's 6'5". People see things differently. We are all built different. Even the people who are the same height still see things differently because they're still built different. People are just built different. You will not see the same thing. That's just generally how it works. So again, do research. Just do research. Don't believe me. Do research. From there, it's up to you. But seriously, just do research. That's what I did. That's why I'm where I'm at right now. I don't just do things because it makes my heart bounce and skip. But yeah, that's my rant for the day. So yeah.